And then COVID happened, and most of the news was mostly coming early on from what was going on in Italy, as we saw that get worse before anything else. And one of the things that came out early on in that quarantine were also these beautiful moments of the human spirit, when we saw people come out onto their balconies and create music with each other. This tenor singer from Florence, Maurizio Marcini, came out onto his balcony in Florence to sing the song Nessun Dorma, which means let no one sleep. And it just brought me to tears when I saw the video of this. Obviously, everybody being in a very heightened emotional mood already, it was his beautiful voice and the content of the song that was very powerful, but it was also, there was something I felt kinship to, which was the idea that I felt like it wasn't necessarily that he felt like he was trying to brighten up the day of his community. It more felt like I could relate to the idea of needing to get something out, needing to get it out of your system. And the idea of being a trained professional, a skilled professional, having picked this one craft, doing it so well that he sings professionally, and then being forced to stay indoors. It's like a bird that has to stay in a cage and can't fly. So I think that's what I felt, was this idea with all these big questions of what was gonna happen to galleries, museums in a COVID world, and your career. It just kind of felt like it was a beautiful reminder that it was more just about getting it out and just expressing something. And so that reminded me of his form, and while he's singing, that reminded me of Toulouse-Lautrec's Moulin Rouge images, as well as I started thinking about my tendency to elongate forms and where that was coming from. It's like definitely coming from a graffiti background, but there was more to that. It was like I always kind of stretch out the form, and maybe you could say comic books and illustration has something to do with it, but I think I realized it had a lot to do with the body's as it is, like kind of inability to kind of express a dynamic movement in a still image. So I had to contort it in some way. So I was reminded of like El Greco, who had elongated his forms. And I felt like that's the space where you can break the rules, because it's about establishing a mood. At the same time, I was thinking about the limitations of the body. I didn't want to break the body completely by stretching it so much that it would become completely surreal, like a Peter Saul painting. But I wanted to think more like Frank Stella, and this idea of there's parameters of the canvas, and what fits within that structure is things that reflect those limitations. So the repetition of that form that reflects the actual limitations of the canvas structure itself. So I wanted to think about that in terms of the human body and the form, where it's like I could stretch it, but it would still be confined to the way that the human body unfolds as is, you know? So if you see this figure, this drawing is color pencil, and you can see the face being impacted by this face in the right corner, and the elongated form having that El Greco influence. But there's also things that I always carry in the back of my mind, and I'm like, oh, I want to use that one day. And I think one of those was definitely the palette and moments in this piece where I'll never forget the Chris O'Feely show I saw at the New Museum. And I'll always remember that yellow and deep dark purple combination, which is something that appeared right here. And intentionally so. It was like a color combination that I had been thinking about for a while.